A problem isn't a problem unless you're doing nothing to solve it. You have to understand that a problem is very simply a lesson, and when you begin to develop into the individual to solve the problem, you are now growing as a person. Therefore, the problem is not really a problem, but more of a obstacle that you will overcome to grow into a more developed and sufficient individual. And so when you have problems and you ignore these problems, now the problem is a problem because the problem is remaining a tension, it's remaining a resistance in your life. And so if you truly want to develop, if you want to grow, or if you want to take a step in the right direction of life, well, you have to understand that your problems, life is 99% problem solving. And you have to understand that if you have problems and you're doing nothing to solve those problems, well, you're going to be dealing with a lot of internal resistance. You're going to have a lot of intention that is going to manifest out of you as avoiding these problems. And you have to understand that these problems can be as simple as your body weight. These problems can be simple as your addiction. And if you can't solve these problems, you're going to naturally have a built-in resistance. You're going to have a built-in intention to avoid the responsibility of fixing those problems. And so as the individual who is living and existing within these problems, it's your duty to be a responsible adult and move accordingly, to move in the direction of creating a positive outcome that rids all the negative resistance within you. And so the best way to solve a problem is to know you have a problem. Because if you're avoiding a problem, it's most likely because you believe that there's not a problem, or the problem is not as big, because you are avoiding the mental energy of transmitting your thought into that problem because you are actively avoiding it. So the problem may not seem like a big deal to you, but the reason it's not a big deal is because you are on purposely concentrating your energy to avoid the being aware of the problem, to feel as if the problem is not as bad. But a problem is a problem. And so you can sit there and pretend that you are not fat, but when we look at you, we are aware that you are fat. And you are aware that you are fat, and so this will manifest as insecurity. And so you have to understand that insecurity is going to be projected onto other people passively, because we no longer live in a world where people are primitive and will aggressively try to project how they feel internally onto you. But you have to understand that is more primal. If you are a primal individual, you will 100% project how you feel internally onto someone by being aggressive. And so we have to truly understand that if you are not a primal individual, if you are a modern type of person, if you are very calm, if you are in your own comfort zone most of the time, well, you're going to manifest this insecurity as passive aggressiveness. And so this is where we realize that your problem is not just a problem to you, but the moment you avoid the fixing of the problem, because the fixing of the problem, the work that you need to do to fix the problem on end, is going to fulfill you that the problem is already fixed, because now you consciously know you are taking steps in the right direction with results. You're actually gaining a momentum and growing in the aspect of ridding your problem. Because most of you have the problems, then you pretend, or you trick your own ego into validating you that you are solving the problem, but you did nothing. I see this all the time. You go to the gym and you see someone who is trying to solve a specific problem with their weight, and they fail miserably, and they did nothing for 45 minutes, and then 6 months down the line they look the same, and then it was the gym that was the problem, not the work ethic, not the mindset, and not what the state of consciousness that they were embodying. They didn't believe that they could do it. And so problems equal internal resistance, and you have to understand that if you build up internal resistance, it's going to manifest as stress. And stress, living in a constant state of stress, is literally degrading your body, and it's destroying the cells within you, and that's a scientific fact. And so you have to truly understand that if you have a problem that is stemming from the lack of development within you, to have an inadequacy that is projected outwardly, you have to shift you have to shift your internal state into the individual who can solve that problem by embodying the right mindset. It's the mindset that's going to get the external results. The external results will not come to the same individual that created the problem. You have to shift into a problem solver. And so the universe itself, it does nothing but expand and create, growth. When we look at the tree, it fucking grows. And so a problem equals minimization, and a problem equals contraction. And so if you are contracting instead of expanding, you are going against the law of the universe. And so if you are going against the law of the universe, well, no wonder you're dumped with all this internal resistance that is causing you to live in a state of constant stress. And so it's the conquering of the resistance by the solving of the problems that is going to develop your character into the character who can fix the reverberations of inadequacies with adequate mental frameworking and problem solving. It's all problem solving and the simplest of rudimentary problems that you exist within but neglect the responsibility to handle is causing a resistance that is manifesting outwardly, and you're now projecting your insecurities onto other people. And so when you are dealing with a lot of problems, you now become a problem to other people in the environment, and now you are shifting other people to feel like there is a problem, and so now you are causing disharmony. The solving of the problem is what's going to cause harmony, and you do that by developing into the individual that will solve the problem by actively taking the step that you need to take to solve the problem. And so the problem, you have to understand that you have to be aware of the problem. And how do you do that? With the truth. If you look in the mirror and you don't appreciate the vessel that you inhabit, well, there's something wrong with the habits, and you have a problem and resistance that you need to face and to conquer. If you have an addiction and you can't give up something external that is literally controlling your internal state to feel comfortable, you need something externally to feel comfortable within, because within you are uncomfortable. You have to understand that that is a problem. So we have to be aware of problems. You guys glorify the overeating. You guys glorify the over drinking and the over smoking. And then we look at you and you have this smile like you are in a reverberation of just massive influxes of problems, of resistance. You are a bad example to everyone around you. If your younger sibling followed your path, he would be fucked. And so we have to truly become the example, and you do that through the conquering of the resistance. And so most of you guys fail to open your eyes and to truly confront what is holding you down, because when you confront what's holding you down, it goes against your identity. You see, you guys identify with the negative patterns and the negative resistances, and this is how you get trapped in a mental prison, and now you feel as if you can never lose the weight. You feel as if you can never quit the addiction. Well, if you walk around with a weed t-shirt, weed Crocs, and a weed hat, when you finally realize that weed is the reason you're lazy as fuck, you still live at your mom's house at 22, well, you realize that you've been identifying with the weed to the point that you're now the weed man. How the fuck are you gonna quit if that's what the fuck you identify with? Your identity needs evidence of what it identifies with. And if you identify with the low quality things, you're going to be a low quality person, because what you identify with creates your identity. And which, to prove to yourself that that's what you identify with, you're going to take actions to prove that you identify with that certain thing. And so this is why we identify with the personal development. This is why we identify with the beautification and the process of becoming the best version of ourselves. This is why we identify with waking up every day and showing up as the best, never missing a 3 a.m. wake up, never missing a day at the gym, and never missing out on what could potentially be an opportunity for us to grow in the right direction and ground ourselves where we need to be grounded, to bear the fruit of life and to enjoy it instead of suffering it due to pure inadequacy and built up resistance that we refuse to solve, because the confrontation of what is causing that resistance is the responsibility and accountability that we lack. And so we have to truly take a breath in look in the mirror and think of every time we've betrayed ourselves, every time we went against our own will, every time we broke our word, and then we're going to have to take a step to never do it again. And so this is where you can either change your identity to be the individual who's going to compound into the individual to never break their word, or you're going to look at this, weaponize it against yourself, shrink yourself even more, let your perception use you as a source of just cadences to rob yourself out of the opportunity to take the step you always needed to grow into the individual you need to be. It's that simple. Peace!